November 15th coaching conversation. So Jade, I was happy to observe you in both your co-teaching science class as well as your class here today. I noticed a lot of instructional strategies used, and I observed what you were doing and observed what the students were doing. So just to kind of realign our focus here, so your observation in the co-teaching science class, the students were working individually on CK12, a universe packet. Could you elaborate on the lesson a little bit?
We have had a lot of shifting in that class, so you jumped right in when we gave the power of control over to some of the other science teachers, just to get us through that week. They put together this packet. It covers everything that we were discussing in astronomy, the astronomy unit in there. But there was a little lull, so the packets were given, but they were basically supposed to use their textbook to fill in the blanks and use that information. After that, we had them glue it into their interactive notebook, and then the new long-term sub actually put together a PowerPoint that went over the actual packet. So we skipped a page in their notebooks, had the worksheet glued in on the left side, and then went back and did PowerPoints for the content and had them take notes on the right side. That way they had the independent practice introduction, basically, which I would never have just thrown a packet. I probably would have done the PowerPoint first and then done the packet. But it worked out and they did really well on it. So, and this was over a 2-day period. So you saw the initial of that assignment, and then we finished it yesterday.
So if you were to go back and kind of co-plan with the long-term sub, would you have suggested the PowerPoint?
Yes, and we've already sat down and talked about that because there's a tool that we're using for inquiry cycle 1 that I'm sitting down with her, and it's 25 questions that you should do right at the start of a new co-teaching relationship. And since it's new to me and her at this point, we're kind of starting over. We even started over with a new syllabus, and we're kind of feeling each other out as she learns our levels of our kids in there, because it's very, very diverse. Where she's definitely allowing me to have a little bit more input, because how the PowerPoint notes went after they had already done the worksheet, there was a lot of aha moments that they were really struggling on the worksheet, and I think that if we would have done the PowerPoint first, they would have gotten it a little bit more. So we have already planned to do it kind of backwards and start with an instruction piece with a PowerPoint in their notes, and then give them the reins to use their notes to help them fill out the packet as well, and not just throwing a textbook at them in the packet saying, here you go.
Good luck.
Good luck.
So could you explain a little more about the dynamic between you and the long-term sub in there?
It's good. At first I was a little concerned, but I think she was just nervous. It was not a very easy thing to agree to that specific long-term agreement, but after she called it the elephant in the room, we did have to discuss certain aspects of why she was coming in, when she was coming in, and why there was no lesson plans set up previously for her. So she's doing a really good job at just restarting and starting from scratch, basically 3 months into the school year. And we have only taught 5 times together now, and it's already starting to feel just more and more comfortable each time. She's really open to my suggestions, and my style of maybe classroom management is a little different than hers, so we're gonna have to keep working on that. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think you always need that. Not necessarily good cop, bad cop, because I'm definitely not a good cop. We're both bad cops. But I'm a little bit more patient with the kids that are identified with an IEP. And I feel like as a new teacher, because she's a new teacher as well, she's only subbed. She hasn't ever had like a a contracted job. So she's really starting to learn how the co-teaching world works, and I think she's liking it. So I think it's gonna go great.
Cool. Do you have any ideas how you could further facilitate you guys' relationship?
We are talking with the administration, and I know for my other co-teaching relationship that is on our 2nd year now, and we're doing amazing. We know each other. We've worked together in this classroom for over a year now. We know, buttons and personal boundaries and classroom teaching style. The only way I got to that point was actually going through a year with her. But we also had some time set aside through admin that they let us take a whole day to kind of do a release day, and we ended up planning our whole second semester right around this time last year. So I think just maybe getting some more one-on-one time for her and I to sit down and then start planning out more in advance. I think that's gonna help our whole relationship.
Cool. And I remember when you planned with that teacher last year, how valuable that was.
It was great.
I definitely advocate for that. Okay. Is it okay to switch to the next lesson?
Yeah.
Okay. So observed a marking the text activity. Students, correct me if I'm wrong, students were asked to mark 3 different types of irony. You provided guided support, a little bit of direct instruction, and then circulated while all students worked independently. Could you describe that lesson a little bit to me?
The intro to that lesson happened 2 days ago on our previous block period. We went over a PowerPoint discussing the 3 types of irony. They used their interactive notebooks to build a foldable, it's like this little three flap thing. I think I showed it up today. They were instructed to use the information that we went over in our previous class and try to see if they could figure out how to identify 3 different types of irony. It was a worksheet. It was a little hefty. I feel like if I used that specific worksheet again, I might cut a little bit out of it. 40 was a little redundant and they started losing interest, I feel like. But other than that, they can use that foldable and then use this worksheet, which will also be included in their notebook. They can use that on their test preps and their study guides. So they have all different sorts of examples on how to identify an irony. I noticed that a couple of them were struggling, and when we taught the lesson, I always try to teach them questions that they could ask themselves, because the self-talk and the self-reflection when I'm doing my own work really helps me. So I'm trying to teach them to literally talk to themselves and ask a question that's gonna help them get to that point, which is why I went and wrote up on the board. Color coding is really good with these guys too, because they really identify if one content area is one color and the other, content is a different color, and so forth. So it went really well. A couple things I would change would obviously be to lessen the amount of questions, because I think it was a little repetitive. And then I believe I will also make them write the specific questions that I wrote up halfway through. When I noticed they were struggling, I'll probably give that to them right off the bat next time.
Cool. And I observed the same thing, a few students struggling with the lengthy assignment. One student in particular, it said, I'll only do the front and the back of the worksheet. How did you handle that situation, or how did that unfold?
That particular student is a difficult one, and it's difficult to get him focused on a task and then to follow through with a task. So we are playing, I've been in constant communication with his case managers to see if the strategies that I want to use are appropriate and if they align to what they're trying to get him to work on. But I will take whatever work that he will produce. It's very difficult to get him to do anything. And if he wants to do one side of the worksheet, I will grade him appropriately and then try to give him some supplemental work to bring up that grade. So he doesn't fly off the handle right off the bat. I tell him, it's fine, just work on the front. And if you're only gonna get to the first 2, then that's fine with me. But knowing there's gonna be another time for him to pick that back up and continue to work on it.
Cool. And then just took some notes on the seating arrangement in your class. Noticed different pods, so 3 in one pod, 4 in another pod, a couple students on the floor, 2 students at the back, and then a couple independent workers. Is that intentional?
The groups?
Yeah,
No,
how students are ranked.
Absolutely not. We tried a group seating to help with behaviors that were happening in a 5th period class, which was the study skills. And we're moving that towards more of like a AVID prep curriculum, so like little mini tutorials, if you will. So that's where this grouping came in. But I don't know if you caught it at the very end, we're doing a seating chart when we come back from break. That group back there, no matter if I split them up, as soon as we have a tech break or anything, they gravitate toward each other, and I think it's just a really unhealthy mixture of testosterone over there right now. So when we get back from break, and that's what that student came up and expressed, hey, the kid that sits at the group table behind me keeps saying things to me. Now whether or not, how far I'm gonna take that because of the specific student is usually on the giving end of that type of those things. I'm not sure, but I'll have to weigh out my options, but I'm definitely doing a seating chart to where they're a little bit more spread out.
Cool. And then, what's the rule in class as far as technology? If they're done, are they allowed to move on to other work on the computer, or?
Yes, if they're done, they're allowed to move on to, they can start their tech break early. Usually we have a set embedded portion for tech breaks, but they are a really difficult crowd and I'm losing the battle with their personal technology at this point.
Absolutely. So what are some ideas of how to kind of correct this moving forward?
I've tried the little pocket thing organizer, and with certain specific students, they absolutely refuse to give up their device, and it's gotten so far as, you know, just an all-out standoff in the classroom until supervision can get here, which I've seen just completely destroy any instruction that I could ever get done with anybody. So that is a really good question, and that's something that I'm gonna hopefully start navigating through in some of my cycles to try to remediate, because at this point I'm pretty lost as to what to do with their personal technology. I mean, do I dumb everything back down and do everything on paper packets because I can't trust them to not switch between tabs? Or do I continue with what I'm doing and have half the class switching between Fortnite? You know what I mean? So I'm lost in that department. I need help.
Well, let's definitely tease that out, and that's a good goal for our